begin our meeting. Okay, so warm greetings to all our sisters and brothers from the Philippines, India, and every corner of the world that join us today on this special edition of Pragia CS Studio. Today we have a very interesting and we think practical subject by Brother Vicente. He is going to talk about Theosophy and the corporate life. But before we officially introduce our speaker, let us come together in silence, reciting the universal invocation, indicating the unity in diversity and oneness of life. And as this worldwide situation is still tense, and please, after that universal invocation, we invite you to follow 1 minute of silence to send our thoughts of strength, peace, love to all people in the world who are suffering, who are having difficult times, and especially to our brothers and sisters of Ukraine. So please get comfortable, and with all the love of your heart, the intention of your heart, let's repeat together the universal invocation. Oh, hidden life, vibrant in every atom. Oh, hidden love, living in every creature. Oh, hidden light, shining in every creature. Oh, hidden love, embracing all in oneness. May all who feel themselves as one with thee know they are therefore one with every other. Let's keep 1 minute of silence. Peace, peace, peace. Well, it is our pleasure to welcome today our dear brother Vicente, who many of us surely know and from whom we surely have learned a lot about self-transformation, education, and he is a great and very engaged theosophical worker who currently is the president of Golden Link College Foundation in the Philippines. And he is the author of a number of books, such as The Process of Self-Transformation, On Education, Why Meditate, Introduction to Morals and Dogma, The Ageless Wisdom, A Life Remembered. He was the president of the Theosophical Society in the Philippines and the Indo-Pacific, Federation of Theosophical Society, and he has conducted the School of the Wisdom of the Theosophical Society in Adyar. Currently, he is a part of the General Council of the Theosophical Society. Apart from the books I have mentioned, he has compiled and edited the chronological edition of the Mahatma letters to A.P. Synod. He is also the associate editor of the Theosophical Encyclopedia. That is a book that has been very, very useful, I imagine, for many of us in our research, etc. As we have mentioned, he has been conducting the self-transformation seminar for more than 20 years and in 20 countries around the world. This is a seminar that bridges the gap between the ideas of human living with the realities of the worldly life. And for those who have had the precious opportunity to be in one of these seminars, we can see how this helps to deal with the problems of human life, such the current problems of human life as stress, emotional distress, etc. To manage all these problems and to be more aware of our relationship with those kind of problems. In addition, he had also given courses on stress management, leadership, corporate culture building, marital harmony, parenting, transformative education, comparative religion, theosophy, meditation, happiness, and spiritual life. And today's subject, that is theosophy in the corporate life, is very related to his professional life because he has been engaged in the business of manufacturing, import, and export for over 40 years. And he is as well the president of Philippine Bell Manufacturing Corporation and the president or chairman of companies that are involved in the export of garments and establishment of housing communities. So as we can see, Brother Big has a very wide knowledge of this subject that he is going to share with us today. And he has established and is the president of several foundations engaged in education, scholarship, and community development. And in addition to the Golden Link, which we have mentioned, he is the president. He oversees 5 other theosophical schools in the Philippines, using educational approaches that do not use fear, anger, competition, but rather foster a loving and caring atmosphere that bring out excellence in the student. And I can say from Adyar Theosophical Academy that has been established in India with all Vic's experience and guide. He also oversees the wonderful process that is happening there, and we are very thankful to him for that. He has served as consultant of the Philippine Department of Education and Office of the President Advisor on Peace Process. So, with no further ado, I want to invite Brother Vicente to share with us that experience that he has in the field of corporate life with the background that he has also in theosophy and spiritual life. So please, Brother Vicente, the floor is all yours. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation.
Thank you very much, Catalina. Is my voice okay?
Perfect. It's coming perfect.
All right. So I'd like to thank you and Shikar for inviting me to speak on the subject of theosophy and the corporate life. You know, this subject is seldom spoken about in theosophical platforms. Usually we talk about the spiritual life, about theosophy, but we hardly touch on the day-to-day mundane life in relation to theosophy. But at the same time, I believe that it is an important one because almost all of us are somehow engaged in some kind of career or livelihood that involve earning income, having a business, dealing with people, dealing with competition, management, supervision, and so on. Now, many people tend to distinguish between spirituality and the corporate life as if they're completely separate. But this was one of the things that I realized, and it is important to realize that in reality, there is nothing outside of the spiritual life, even very mundane and material things. Everything that we encounter in life is an episode, a training, and a test in the spiritual life. A small irritation, for example, is an indication that we are carried away by external circumstances. And this is something that we should be able to transcend when we are entering the spiritual life. A little attempt to lie is an indication that we have not been able to integrate our life yet. So these are small, small things that are actually very closely related to the spiritual life. Of course, there are people who are not interested in the spiritual life, and that's okay. And they will do according to the values of society, they will do what is convenient. That is the stage of their life that they are struggling with, and that's okay. But there are those wherein which, while being engaged in the mundane life and the corporate life, they are also already feeling this inner call, this inward flame, which is the beginnings of the spiritual life. Let me just share a bit of background about one of the things that changed my life and changed my destiny in relation to business and the spiritual life and theosophy. And I was born into a business family. Not only my parents, but my uncles and distant elders were all in business. And I was able to observe them very closely every day about how they live and how they work. I was still in high school when I felt that there was something wrong with the way the elders were living their lives. They were so busy, and yet they get upset about problems, they seldom smiled, and were generally not happy. They looked busy about things that appeared to be so important, and yet they seemed not to be happy in pursuing the things that they were doing. This was also a time, at the time in high school, I was already interested in in the in something else in life, the paranormal, the mystical, things like reincarnation. And then because of these two worlds that I was exposed to, I realized that there are actually at least two different worlds that I was facing. And in a way, both are real. But at the same time, I began to doubt the validity of the social and business world. Nevertheless, when I went to college, I took up economics, which is a business-oriented thing. And after I graduated from my postgraduate studies, my father involved me in the establishment of a manufacturing business, and I became its first general manager. And I was thrown into the issues of production processes, labor issues, accounting, sales, chemical formulas, and dealing with the government. And I remember I did not like it at all. I was particularly bothered by conflicts between management and employees. And at the same time, at the time, I was already a member of the Theosophical Society. I was already doing meditation. I was already studied yoga. And so at the time, I already had read almost all the popular books in Theosophy, including some parts of the Mahatma letters, as well as the books of Krishnamurti. The ideals of the spiritual life seemed so distant from the corporate life. I wanted to leave the corporate life, and I would like to live in seclusion up in the mountains. In fact, brothers and sisters, I did go to the mountains to explore how I could live there alone. I was thinking, where do I get my water? Where do I get my food? And so on. I did go to the mountains to look into that. That's how serious I was. And at that time, although I was already in the business, I decided that I would leave the business life. And I gave myself 2 years because my brother, the younger brother, was still in the university, and I was waiting for him to graduate so that I could transfer to him my responsibilities. And then I decided I would like to live the higher life. Then something happened. One time, I went to India on a business trip. It was while there was a question that came to my mind. And the question was this: was I leaving or abandoning the business life because I was escaping the difficulties of dealing with problems connected with it? The word escape struck me very strongly. Was I evading the difficulties of living and trying to go into the mountains to live a life alone without complications with people, no problems in social life and manufacturing? So this was the question that struck me. At the time, I already, as I mentioned, read a lot of books on the spiritual life and theosophy. And my readings of theosophy taught me, and I felt convinced that this was true, that every circumstance in life was an opportunity for growth of the soul. We learn from the challenges we face. And what is significant was the growth of the soul, and whether we live the life of a soldier, a farmer, a merchant, a mother, or a sailor, we are really learning something that essentially will be imbibed by the soul. And we forget about our being a soldier, a farmer, life after life. We are brought to our life circumstances by karma because we are supposed to learn and grow from the lessons of that life. This is what in India is called our dharma, the circumstances that we are thrown into where we are given the chance to grow and grow. So back to the question, was I escaping the circumstances of my life? You know, I could not answer it. I could not say, no, I wasn't escaping. And this was a crucial moment for me. Inside of me, I actually suspected that I was perhaps escaping the complications of living. In other words, I was a coward in a way. I didn't like to face all these complications. I wanted to live a simple life. And in effect, I was avoiding the karmic circumstances that I was thrown into in this life. And avoiding the reality of one's circumstances is an indication, I thought, of maturity. I could not forget that moment in India when I made a decision that would alter my destiny. I decided that I would not escape. I would go right into the challenges of the business life until I learned the lessons of that life. Let me give you an example. I dislike selling anything to anybody. I don't even want to sell my books. I don't want to sell, whenever. Anyway, I don't like selling, even if I think that the product is a good one. But that's not the kind of mentality I have. But upon returning back to the Philippines after this insight, I did just the opposite. I dislike selling, but I made a decision. I will do my best as part of my duty as the manager of the company to sell our products. Because if we don't sell our products, our company would close. And that's the end of it. And I failed in my duty. So I looked up the telephone directory, looked up all the possible customers, big and small, who will buy our product, and then went to them one by one. As I said, it was distasteful me. I didn't like it. I offered them, I brought samples, I brought leaflets. But in the Philippines at the time, people look down upon local products and they give a high value to imported products. And there was some truth to it because many local products were of poor quality, including ours at the time. And when I was offering our products, customers or potential customers would sneer at our products, sometimes insultingly. But somehow, because I was not doing it for any material purpose, but rather for something more, something deeper, these things, this insulting, sneering, did not deter me or discourage me at all. And at the time when our factory was already starting, Unionism was very strong in the Philippines under the influence of communist groups that tried to create agitation in many companies, and our company was one of the targets. And I had to face these forces. So long as I feel I was not doing something wrong, it's my duty to stand up to what I thought was right. Besides that, on the first year of our operation, we were losing money, a huge amount of money, because of the low sales and our product quality was uncompetitive. Now we realized that I was facing something which was really not only difficult, but something which is attractive. It was not a challenge at all. It was not interesting to be a businessman under those circumstances. But I felt that this was my first spiritual lesson in the corporate life, that it is not about the money or the income, but rather we must perform the duties that are put into our lap due to our karmic destiny and not escape them and learn to transcend them. Now, I'd like to share with you a quotation from Mahatma K.H. This will be the only slide that I will show now, but it is something that struck me very strongly. Okay, let me just share with you the screen. Many of you know about A.P. Sinat. He was the recipient of many Mahatma letters from Mahatma Kuthumi, Mahatma Maurya, and he was a brilliant journalist. And he wasn't even a formal chela of the Mahatma Kuthumi. And while learning from the letters of Mahatma Kuthumi, he felt discouraged that he could not spend more time on spiritual matters, but was doing very mundane duties in the family and so on. And so he received a letter from Mahatma Kuthumi. Mahatma Kuthumi said, does it seem to you a small thing that the past year has been spent only in your family duties? Nay, but what better cause for reward, what better discipline than the daily and hourly performance of duty? Believe me, my pupil, the man or woman who is placed by karma in the midst of small plain duties and sacrifices and loving kindness will, through these faithfully fulfilled, rise to the larger measure of duty, sacrifice, and charity to all humanity. What better path towards enlightenment you are striving after than the daily conquest of self, the perseverance in spite of want of visible psychic progress, the bearing of ill fortune with that serene fortitude which turns it to spiritual advantage, since good and evil are not to be measured by events on the lower or physical plane. This was a very powerful passage for me because this was the issue I was facing of how to live the spiritual life and at the same time be able to do my duties in the worldly life. As I said, I realized that I wasn't born in the Philippines in a business family by accident. There must be a purpose. And I realized that that purpose was something that I have to face. So it is not so much the external success of our efforts in business or our career, whether it is in rising in our position or in the earning of more money, but rather the way that we handle the tasks that we need to perform as part of our karmic duty. It is to become effective, but at the same time, be impersonal and be true to oneself, not violate our principles. And at that stage, I already felt that life was not about ambition or money. These are just for one incarnation and fades away and forgotten. Only the essence of the experiences are retained that helps the self grow and transcend. Hence, instead of leaving our company, I stayed. It was at the same time that I became very involved in the Theosophical Society, and this mixture of the higher life and the worldly life became a very rich source of my lessons in the growth of the soul. I learned many lessons through the past many decades in connection with my own mundane life and the quest for the higher life. I'll just mention tonight some of them, and hopefully some of you who are involved in the corporate life, in the business life, in your professional career may be able to pick up some principles that I realized were very important in dealing with these two things. One of them was about balance in life. As you know, when we are, let's say, we are in business, we are in politics, we are in medicine, we tend to be so immersed in it, wanting to be good at it. In my case, as our company's crew, because after we started that manufacturing company, after I got married, my wife and I also went to a garments business. And while doing all these duties, I was traveling very often, and very often times I would arrive home late at home because of dinners, meetings with people. And I arrive home late when my children were already asleep. I was that immersed in the preoccupations of the business life. Then I came upon a book at a time that asked about what I thought were the most important things in my life. So I made a list of 3 things that were most important in my life before I die. And when I made a list, money was not in them. I thought that maybe I was idealistic. So after a week, I wrote again my list. Again, money was not in my top list. For a period of 1 year, I made 4 lists, and some of them changed. But among the most important things in my life, money never appeared. Then I realized, because I was now immersed in the garments business, in import and export and so on, I was spending a lot of time, including evenings and Saturdays and Sundays. Then I realized something's wrong with my life. I was spending, I don't know, maybe 80-90% of my life on things that were not really that important on my scale of values. This was an eye-opening insight. So I made a decision. All right, I'll still do my duty in business, but I will now reduce the time that I spend on business and devote my time on those things that were on top, the things that I valued, the things that were important to me. And this went on through the years, and I never turned back on that determination, such that even now, I'm still involved. I'm still chairman or president of companies, but I spend much, much less time now on them. And like tonight, I'm happy to be with you talking about these things. And I often travel for the Theosophical Society. To me, these were more important things. Studying, trying to meditate, pursuing the quest. These were things which were important. And for the past, I don't know, 40, 50 years, this principle of balance guided me and has prevented me from being so immersed and so sunk deeply into the mundane world. So in one slide, I realized that it is essential for all of us that we should sit down and clarify really what are the most important things in life. And we may be surprised to discover that what we are actually doing does not align with the list we made. It means we are doing things because of the pressure and values of society, and we have lost touch with the most crucial inner values in our lives. We must not be carried away by the currents of external society. We must remain true to our inner compass. This I feel up to now is one of the most important things that we must be conscious of, whatever career we go into. Now, let me go into some insights I made about going into the mundane corporate and business life. One of the things that is so endemic, so common in the business life is that business is competition. It's very seldom that you have a monopoly of any business. There are always competitors. Toyota versus Ford or General Motors, Apple versus Microsoft, McDonald's versus Burger King. And businesses consider their competitors as their enemies. My exposure to the ageless wisdom had convinced me that no one is our enemy, not even the worst criminal. And in Christianity, it says, and I'm convinced of it, that we should love our enemy. This is not just a nicety, not just a nice thing to say, but I believe in it. We are all one human family in various degrees of growth, one universal brotherhood and sisterhood. Now, when it came to so-called competitors, my views were different as a businessman, but partly because I was influenced by my father. When I was young, my father had a hardware and lumber business. Now, in our city, which is not here in Metro Manila, we used to live in a smaller city in the south of Manila. In our city, there were 7 lumber businesses. And the owners of these lumber businesses did not talk to one another because they considered themselves as competitors or enemies. The only exception was my father. My father was friends to all of them. He would go and visit and have a chat. And whenever they need something that he could do, he would do it. Whenever he needs help, he would ask them to help them. He was friends with all of them. And when I hear him talk about this, he seemed to be happy with it. And in other words, he was happy that these were his friends. And in fact, sometimes he would even recommend customers to his competitors. Now, this had a very deep impact in my mind because this was opposite to the normal thinking of business that your competitor is your enemy. So when I became a businessman myself, this became a real issue. We are manufacturers of beltings, industrial beltings and automotive beltings. And there are only 2 such factories in the Philippines. There used to be 4, but the two others closed. They were smaller ones, but the 2 of us were the ones that were the major ones. And we were more or less the same size, we had about the same quality, and we were both joint ventures with Japanese companies. And this made us real competitors because if one rises, the other would go down. When the other one goes up, the other would go down. But my father and I never considered them as our enemy. I'll give some examples. One time, this other company ran out of raw materials. And if they wait until the materials would be imported, they would have to stop operation and they would not produce products, which would be good for us, actually, because we would have more sales because they have to stop production. So what did they do? They called us up. They called us up and asked whether they can borrow raw materials from us. And when our staff came to me and asked me whether they could borrow, immediately I said yes. I told our staff, go ahead and lend them whatever we have. I didn't even talk about the price, how they're going to pay us, how they're going to return those borrowed materials. I just said, go ahead and lend them whatever we have. And this happened. And I forgot about it. After about 1 year, the same thing happened to them. They again ran out of raw materials and they called us up again to ask if they can borrow. And again, we lent them the materials without any condition. So again, I forgot about that. Then later, this other competitor of ours had a problem. They had a labor problem where they may have to really stop operation because they were going to have a strike in their company. Now, both our companies were supplying Japanese companies in the Philippines. And these were highly efficient operations that if you supply them anything, you must keep your promise and not stop the delivery. If you say that you deliver at 12 o'clock tomorrow, you must deliver at 12 o'clock. If you fail to do this, you'll be blacklisted and you cannot supply anymore. So now that the other corporation had to stop, they called us up. They said, can you take care first of our customer and supply them your products? And after we solve our problem, can you just return it to us, the customer to us? And I said, yes, we'll take good care of their customer, we'll supply them, and then after they solve their, we return it to them. And so that's it. Now, some people may think that we were very stupid in helping our competitors when these could have been opportunities to increase our sales and market share. Looking back through the past decades, did these helpful acts harm us? The answer is no. Right now, we are the larger company between the two of us. So we did not become smaller, we didn't lose market, even when it helped them. But the more important thing is that while we are actually competing in the market, we don't talk about pricing, we really compete, but we are friends. When they are in a quandary, we'll help them. And if probably we are in the same fix, they will probably help us. And they will never sabotage us. Now, it's the same with our garments company, who is just managed by my wife. We produce highly specialized children's garments for exports. And there were only 5 companies who were doing these specialized kinds of product. And all these other companies who were really competitors were our friends. Whenever we have technical problem, we have machine problem, we would call them up. My wife would call them up and ask them to help, and they would help us. Now, looking back through the years, I realized that this was a much, much better way of going into the corporate world, running a business. Why do we go into business? Why are we in corporations? We just want to have a stable financial life. We want to earn a living. That's all. I want to have financial stability. My neighbor wants to. My competitor wants to. Every one of us. Why should we quarrel? Why should we become enemies? We are not in business in order to become number one or to put down competitors, but rather we'd like to have stability for all of us. So why can't we do this? At the same time, being in harmony with them and being friends with them and not being enemies. Why can't we help each other? And I realized that if all businesses are run this way, there would be harmony, cooperation, lack of stress in running a business. There will be no dog-eat-dog mentality trying to put each other down. Abraham Maslow, one of the greatest psychologists of the last century, devoted part of his life looking into what he called Eucyclian management. In other words, how to run a business, how to run corporations, such that it will bring out the best in people. And he visited companies, big companies, in order to study this kind of, and he wrote articles about this. He had writings about this. And I believe that now and in the future, we should also, all the businessmen, all professional, all career people should look into this, such that whatever career we do in a corporate life, whatever business we do, it must be for the betterment of not only our life, but other people's lives and social life. Many businessmen assume that business is like a war. And so, not only don't I believe in the fact that business is necessarily warlike competition, but also that it is not a, a kind of struggle for survival wherein which we will fight even in an unjust and underhanded way. When business people think of their business that they would like to succeed, oftentimes they think of that it is permissible to use questionable methods in order to attain one's goals and gain more income. So this brings us to another issue in the corporate life and in the business life about the conflict between values, integrity, honesty, justice, and the goals of business life. This kind of dishonesty can be as simple as making false product claims or unethical business practices. As I said, destruction of competitors. For example, salesmen would often exaggerate the merit of their products or lie to their customers to get more sales. They think that being truthful is not possible in business. So this was one of the issues that I faced because studying spirituality, theosophy, I realized that being true and integrated is a very important part of the spiritual life. But I grew up in the Philippines where business practices, I don't know, probably in India it may be similar. Business practices, um, ethical standards are bent many many times in many many ways, such that to become ethical and have integrity is something that is incompatible with successful business practices. That's the view of many people. But this was my dilemma because to me, these values were very important. And at the same time, I'd like that if I go into business, the business should do well. I had to struggle with this. I have to look for ways in which these two things would be possible. At the beginning, I found it very difficult, but I realized that when we do it bite size, bit by bit, it could be done. And then one time I encountered a book, an autobiography by a famous salesman. His name is Joe Girard. And this man had been the greatest salesman in the world by the Guinness Book of World Records for 7 consecutive years. He was selling retail cars, and he has sold more cars and trucks than anybody else in the world for 7 years. Now, when I read this, I was wondering, what did he do to become so successful in sales? Then in the book in his autobiography, he gave an example. He said, when somebody comes over to see him, wanting to buy a kind of car or pickup or truck, and then his agency, which is selling General Motor cars, may not have it. And yet he knows that Ford Motor, his competitor, has it. So what would he do when the buyer is interested to buy a product that they don't have but the competitor has? Normally, a scheming salesman would say, oh, that one is probably not the best one. This is a better one. And so he will sales talk him to buy another product. But Joe Girard never did that. Realizing that this is what this customer needs, he would say, I'm sorry, we don't have that kind of model for our vehicles, but I know that Ford Motor has that. And they have a dealership out there, not very far from here. And if you want, I can call them up and tell them that you're going there and you can look at their product because that's what will suit you. Now imagine this. Here is somebody who is giving this customer to a competitor. Is that good business practice? Normally we'd think, no, you are losing your customer. But Joe Girard would say, but sir, in case in the future you need something that we have, here is my card, please just call me. Now, if you were the customer of Joe Girard, how would you take this? You would trust him. You would trust that he would not lie to you, he would be true to you, and he would not try to sales talk you out of what he really likes. And this became the secret of Joe Girard's success. People who are looking for cars and trucks who have already heard of him would call him up first. If Joe Girard has it, they will buy from him because they trusted him. And this was because he was honest, he had integrity. And this was the key to becoming the greatest salesman in the world. And he did it with integrity, and he succeeded in this worldly life. So one of the things that I learned is that it does not harm one's business or one's career if we are truthful to customers or to other people. In our companies, we have salespeople going around the entire country. They are told not to lie to their customers. Suppose they promise that, okay, we're going to deliver it to you this afternoon. And then the salesman forgot about it. And then the customer is calling him and already very angry. Now, a dishonest salesman will just say, oh, I'm sorry, maybe it's on the way. I already sent it, and maybe the traffic is very bad, and so on. Now, if this customer discovers that I have just lied to him, he will not trust me anymore, and maybe I will lose him forever. But if I tell him the truth, I say, oh, sorry, I really forgot. I'm going to send it by taxi right now. I'm going to grant you 5% discount. I really apologize for this. This was my mistake. But I'm sending it over right now. Now, the customer may be angry with me now, but will he be angry with me all the time? He will remember that I first was truthful to him, and second, I made amends, like having extra discount or sending the goods in a taxi, and he will see my sincerity. He would want to continue to buy from me because there is assurance when dealing with me, and that I would not deceive him or lie to him. And this is the basis for telling our salesmen, don't lie. You'll get in trouble sometimes, but if you are caught to be lying and you are untruthful, you will lose your business. So having integrity is not necessarily incompatible with the worldly life, with the mundane life, with the business life. And some people find that this difficult, but it can be done. Do it on a bite-sized basis. So our salesmen, we tell them, never bribe your customers, never bribe the purchasing people. Even if they don't buy from you, just be friends with them. One of these days, the tide will turn, and then maybe you'll be able to sell to them. But if not, then sell to other people without bribing them, because you are harming them. You are injuring them. You are making lose their own self-esteem if you do that. So do it well with respect towards the other person. In being involved with corporations, with the corporate life, we have hundreds of people under us. One of the things I realized was that we need to look into the welfare of our own people, not just the customer, just the stockholders, but our own people, our own employees. And this involves a culture and a set of policies that will bring this about. Now, every company is a miniature society. It has its own culture composed of its values, relationships, practices, and customs. When we don't think about this culture, we can have a company and mini society of unhappy, disgruntled, distracting, and even disloyal employees. Or, if we plan this well, it can be composed of friendly, contented, happy, trusting, and loyal employees. This is something that doesn't come by accident. It must be something that is the result of our relationship with them, our sense of values, and our policies. Now, this creation of such a culture is very important. Why? Because more than half of the waking hours of a person is spent in their work in a company. They spend less with their family, more with their work. Parents do not spend 8 hours with their children except during Sundays or holidays. Most of the time, it may be just 1 hour, 2 hours, but they would spend 8 or more hours with their companies. And therefore, if the culture, the environment of the company is an unhappy one that creates anxiety, then this person, all those employees, will not become happy and fulfilled as human beings. And therefore, I realized that it is part of our duty to create a culture of trust and friendliness, mutual care and security in our work environment. Whether you are just talking about a department or whether you're talking about an entire company, it's the same thing. If, let's say, I'm just in charge of 7 people in my department, then I must create the culture for my department. I may not have control over the other departments, but at least in this department, the people under me would feel fulfilled, trusting, and happier. So in our companies, one of the things we do is to conduct the self-transformation to our employees. We have done this, and it has made a big difference, not only in their work, in their attitude, but also in their own lives. I remember, for example, that we have 2 supervisors who have not been talking to one another for 2 years. And whenever there is need for work coordination, they don't even coordinate because they are angry towards each other. After they attended the self-transformation seminar, they were able to resolve this issue, remove the anger within them, and they became friends after that. Not only does this help the work environment, but also their personal life. They become better parents. They become better husbands and wives. They are more capable of being happy spouses and parents. And they also learn how to remove their anxieties, their stress, their anger, and their fear. Of course, it's not as simple as that, but at least the culture, the company is able to help make their lives something which would be lighter, more integrated, and harmonious. Eventually, they learn how to interact with one another harmoniously, with their family, through effective communications. So I feel that this is an important part of the corporate life, not thinking of it as work and separate from our personal life. Now, as part of this, one of the things that I consider important is to be able to teach our employees, our coworkers, on how to remove their stress and distress in their life. And hence, I consider it important that not only do we not cause so much pressure and stress on people such that they will no longer be able to eat and sleep, but also to teach them how to be effective at the same time, be able to live a life of equanimity. This is one of the great lessons actually that I learned in the Theosophical Society, because we often talk about happiness, fulfillment, serenity, paradise, heaven. And yet, in our daily life, we seem to have been unable to remove all these anxieties and stress which cause us a lot of unhappiness. It was through the Theosophical Society that I learned that these things are possible, whether it is in the personal life or in the corporate life or in the family life. It is possible, and this is done through self-awareness, meditation, and right values. Another aspect, in whatever organization we belong to, whether it is a nonprofit, but more so when it is a profit organization like a business, it is important that that entity, that body, should contribute something towards the betterment of society. We individuals are never separate from what we call society. Society is just the reflection of what we are individually and collectively. And conversely, if we want to have, if the society is chaotic, corrupt, violent, this will also affect our lives. And therefore, there is this mutual effect between the individual and society that affects the harmony, the happiness of both the group and the individual. And therefore, in being part of any organization, especially in business, we must deliberately make this business something that will help contribute towards the betterment of society, making this world a better world. So how can we do this? For example, first, we must not engage in a business that will harm people or harm society. So for example, I would say, don't go into the production of cigarettes. You know that cigarettes can produce cancer. Why produce and make money out of it? Uh, don't even invest in stocks of cigarette companies. I would consider alcohol as another one, then casinos as another one. In my case, because I'm a vegetarian, I won't go into any business that will be harmful to animals. In fact, right now, we are in organic vegetable growing. And that's something that is fulfilling and fun to do. So the first principle that I realized is that don't go into any kind of enterprise, any kind of career that will be harmful to us and to other people and to society. The second thing is that the company, which is supposed to earn profit, must always set aside a part of whatever earnings for the betterment of society. Either put up a foundation or do something that will help people. And this not just to have nice photo ops such that people will see that this company has CSR or corporate social responsibility and it is good, looks good on paper or in newspaper. No, it is simply because we want a better world. We want a happier world. And this can be done not just by the government, but by the private sector. The private sector is a very important partner in this endeavor with the government to help create a better and more enlightened society. I've heard of many business people who complain about corruption in the government, especially in the third world. The Philippines is one of them. We complain and complain about big corrupt politicians who are really milking the whole country for their own self-benefit. But at the same time, early in my business life, I realized that I cannot complain if I'm part of it. If I bribe government officials, who is corrupt? You may say that the government people are corrupt, but I'm making them corrupt because I'm a part of it. And therefore, if I don't want a corrupt government, it must stop with me. Because if I do it, then I'm really part of the whole problem. And I cannot even raise a finger to complain that the government is very corrupt because I myself am the source of it. And hence, it is important for us in any organization, especially business organization, that we must avoid these kinds of practices which will worsen our society just for the benefit of one company or one individual. So now, I'd like to just wind up. Maybe if you'd like that we discuss later, we'll do so. But I'd like to wind up by just saying that we, at whatever age, must never abandon our values and principles in life. I think we all know that almost all young people, when they are young, they are very idealistic. They are looking at an ideal world, a peaceful world, a just world. In other words, a heaven on earth. That's what they dream about. But as they grow up, they begin to realize that reality, social reality, is different. Social reality, some parents or some teachers will say, honesty is the best policy. But at home, the children keep on hearing them lying right and left towards their wife, children, office mate, and so on. And they begin to realize that this world does not follow at all the ideals that they learned when they were young. And so at a certain age, gradually they begin to adapt to society, to the values of society, to the bent, the crooked values of society. And they adopt, and then they become part of this world. Krishnamurti once said, he said, no person who can fully adjust to society is a sane person. No person who can fully adjust to society is a sane person. Whenever we adjust fully to society, we're adapting to the values of society. And how can we be sane when we are already adopting wrong values, not only in society, but in our lives? So what I would suggest, especially to young people, when you enter the professional life, you will encounter this conflict between your ideals, your idealism, your principles, and the realities of society, and you are being tempted and drawn to adapt to it. Now, you may or may not be successful in resisting, but don't forget it. Keep the conflict alive. In other words, even if you find that you cannot solve the situation, but you feel the conflict, that's all right. Do not smother and suppress the conflict, because this conflict is important. It is the one that makes you true to yourself. But if you smother it off and then let it be suppressed, then you're now just one of those people in society who's making this world a worse place. When we keep our idealism, bit by bit, in small ways, we can do something in order to avoid all the incompatible ethical values that we encounter in society, and then we introduce it in our own small sphere. We start with a family. We start with our children. We start with your workplace. You start with your relationship with the boss, with your customers, and so on. Maybe you're not changing the world, but at least in your environment, you are changing it. And whenever more and more of us would be able to do this, society will change. And when there are millions of people who are able to sustain this idealism and try their best to integrate this with our social life, then I believe that this world will become a better place. Not only that, the moment that we become ready for the spiritual life, then we don't have to undo so much of our actions and habits in order to try living the spiritual life. The spiritual life is our ultimate aim. Life after life, we may be soldiers, farmers, merchants, businessmen, politicians, but at the very end, we will be living spiritual lives. All these others were just preparations. And when the time comes that we are ready for it, then our corporate life, our mundane life, have not been molded in such a way that it's so difficult to undo them anymore, because we did not give up our ideals. Then we would be ready for the spiritual life. Good evening to all of you.
Thank you, Brother Vic. I don't know in what words I should say thank you for all the pearls of wisdom that you have shared with us today, and keeping the conflict alive, keeping the conscience alive, and sooner or later it will take its own course and help us change the world. And from your talk, I think I can also make this essence that business should be done for the welfare of everyone, not just for one person, as you said. And I think all the culture and the social pressures, like magazines sharing with people top 10 richest people in the world or top 20 richest people in the world kind of things, is what people run after, and that make them so competitive with each other. I'm really, thankful again and again on behalf of all the delegates today. I think a lot of takeaways from this sharing full of insights. And now we'll open our this platform for any questions and answers which some of us may have, because you have presented a totally different and new aspect of the corporate life. And I agree with you on that, that there are organizations or individuals who don't take bribe or give bribe. So the person in front also does not have the courage to ask from such a person for the bribe. So it's your own aura, or it's your own effect, how strongly you are following it affects the other people also. And please, if you have any questions, kindly raise your hand or put it in the chat box. And to begin with, we have a question in the chat box by Brother Jerwin. He has asked, very rightly, that will investing in equity, such as stocks, instills the theosophy-driven principles, because I see most of the listed blue chip companies practice cutthroat approaches.
Brother Vic, can you unmute, please?
Okay, sorry, I muted.
It's okay.
Okay.
Thank
For
you.
those who are investing in companies like stocks, and you feel that this is important, because for many people, it's not important. They don't even look into the practices. They will just look at the ROI of the company and then, oh, this is good investment. For the past 10 years, it has grown like this. But there are people who are discriminative about this. And so you look to find out what stocks you are investing in. For example, the moment you invest in casino companies, you are in effect saying, go ahead and let's have more casinos. If you invest in a profitable cigarette company, we'll say, go ahead, it's all right to have people with cancer, and so long as it's profitable. But some of us now are bothered by this. And that's the reason why many companies today would announce, for example, if they're in cosmetic products, they are not engaged in animal experiments, they do not use animal products, and so on. In fact, there are many products right now where they put in the label about that these are free from animal testings and so on, that they are vegan, that they are organic, and so on. So the more people who become conscious about the practices of companies, the more these companies will try to adhere to those principles. Now, most of us don't have the time to really go into the research into the companies, but if you feel it's important, then do so. Let me just, because when I was reading that question, I come across things like, let's say, McDonald's and those food chain stores. And I realized that, to me, if you ask me, I would not be supportive of them. It involves, for example, food that is not really very wholesome in terms of cholesterol and heart, cardiovascular diseases. Plus, there is so much waste in these kinds of businesses. So it's a bit complex, but some of us may want to look into what kind of business to support it, even if the earnings may be less, but it is something that will help our society a better place. Yes, Kathleen.
Thank you, Brother Vic. Thank you also for that important reminder of that every duty is equally important, and every one of us, by fulfilling our duty, are really fulfilling our mission. That is a very important thing, because we normally tend to think that there are more important things, that maybe being the CIO is more important than being the worker, etc. We make so many differences in our mind. So we thank you also for bringing us that reminder. And there is another question. I will read it You mentioned the workshops of self-transformation among employees and the results. Have you had the opportunity to conduct them among the heads, CIOs, etc.? And if so, what response have you observed?
Yes, I have. There had been companies which have asked us in the Theosophical Society to conduct it for them. And in one case, it is one of the chain stores, franchises in the Philippines, and we had to conduct it to so many of the branches of their stores. Not only that, but also we conducted it for municipalities, mayors, provinces, or towns or cities, and the mayor would ask the key people in the government to attend it. Now, the thing is, it is also important to follow up on this. In our companies, in the Theosophical Society, we are able to follow up. In Golden Link, we are able to follow up because self-transformation that does not just happen overnight. Just because we have a new insight, it doesn't mean that it will be sustained. So this part of the difficulty, that whenever we are introducing change, it must also be sustained. And for those who are able to do support group after that, then they're able to continue with it. But for those who don't, some of them may not produce long-lasting results afterwards, except for those who have who do it by themselves, and then they are able to sustain it on their own.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Vic, for that. And if anyone has any questions, kindly put it in the chat box. And I think this video will be sharing with, and later on when we share this video with you, kindly share with all your contacts who are in corporate field. And also one question is coming to my mind, Brother Vic, that you have shared the side of the corporates, the owners, the business persons, but their employees also you have mentioned, but these employees are basically have to undergo a lot of pressures and deadlines and performance targets. So that creates a lot of stress. So how to deal with that?
In our companies, the same thing. In other words, every business will have to set certain targets, and that the members of the team will have to perform. That's a given. The question is that, do we train our people sufficiently that, number one, they would be effective and efficient, and number two, that they know how to handle stress, and number three, they're able to work together in a harmonized way without violating their principles. These are 3 or 4 facets that we must look into. If we don't train them and they are inefficient, then we have a problem. Then we get frustrated, we get angry. But that's because we may have fallen short of training them. That's the reason why very effective companies devote a lot of time to training. So that's one. At the same time, when there are companies where they push and push their employees, but at the same time, the pushing is not fair, it is like, it is not considerate, then it also becomes a problem. There is a company who has salesmen. You know what they do in order to just keep on pushing the employees upward and upward? They have a rule that every month they will have the sales report of every salesman, and the one at the bottom automatically gets fired. Now, it doesn't matter what you have done. Maybe you perform very well, but when you are at the bottom, you will get fired. Next month, the same thing. And therefore, in 12 months, 12 people will get fired, even if they are good employees. Now, this is unfair, unjust, and cruel to me, because there will always be somebody at the bottom, because sales is never exactly equal. And therefore, to punish a person just because he is at the bottom is simply cruel. So the policy should also be ethical, moral, humane, considerate, compassionate. And so the policy and then the efficiency of the corporation should be looked into, such that overall, even if there's a lot of work, but the feeling, one feels good, even if, let's say, when you feel tired, that's just physical tiredness, but you may be happy. You may not feel tired, but you're unhappy. Now we have to look into a kind of work life wherein which we have a combination of efficiency, effectiveness, plus a wholesome life, a harmonized life. And a lot of business people don't look into this. It's just the profit and the efficiency.
I think, yeah, we should take a lesson from Myanmar, I think, which country which has gross national happiness instead
Bhutan.
of Bhutan, sorry. It's
Yeah.
Bhutan. Yeah. So, yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, we have Brother Taral Munshi. He wants to say something, and then we'll come to Brother Danny Pass. Yeah, as Brother Taral Munshi.
You are muted, Brother Taral.
Unmute yourself, please, Brother Taral.
Am I audible?
Okay. Yes,
Yes.
yes.
I just want to thank Brother Vic for this wonderful presentation, because of that I gained much of the strength. Secondly, just want to share that I was with Procter and Gamble, which was a very hard-working company, and there were every month there were targets and all that. But law of karma also followed there with me. The thing was, whenever there were targets, I used to help my colleagues in completing them, going into their territories and whatnot. Later on, I was rewarded by upgrading of my post and more responsibilities. So I just wanted to share that, like in Theosophy, if we do good work, even in a corporate world, it never goes unnoticed by masters, and we are rewarded. So we should stay on the path which Vic has just told. Just wanted to share my personal this thing with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have also Brother Danny Paz, who has requested the word. Please, Brother Danny.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, your voice is coming perfectly.
Well, I had my opportunity on working with corporations. One of the best was when I worked at a foundation composed of 150 top earning corporations in the Philippines, the Philippine Business for Social Progress. And they contributed 1% of their net income into the foundation. Afterwards, I worked with many others and had opportunities to work with larger corporations, which I deferred, and was very frustrated about corporate life actually. Because I found out that after working within 4 months within a corporation, I would ask myself, is this the company that I would like to grow old with? And the answer is always no. So despite the salaries and opportunities, I did not pursue. And I could have worked at bigger corporations if I wanted to. Anyway, I was so frustrated that I did not fully realize why these things are going until I found out something. Have you heard about Vanguard and BlackRock, the biggest holding corporations in the world? They have a combined assets of more than $20 trillion. They control the central banks. They control the big pharmas. They control the food corporation in the US. In fact, there are only 4 corporations that control the food corporation in the US. And that includes some chemical companies owning food corporations. They control the seeds of the world. They have patented the seeds so that no one else can use it except for their permission. And sad to say, it has become grossly evil because of this control. And I believe they also control these pandemics and these vaccinations and all these things. And I think they plan to kill smaller businesses. That's why, these things going on about vaccination mandates.
Maybe Danny, we avoid airing charges against corporation here. Maybe
Well,
just talk about in general, business in general, rather than focusing because
anyway, business in general in the world is really bleak. Since this pandemic, a lot of smaller businesses have closed down because it's obvious that they cannot compete, and more businesses will be closing down in the future. I admire Big Houchen's principles in running his business and the way he does it and the things that he have already proven to be effective. And these principles are really nothing more than some kind of golden rule. But in general, from my experience, if you work in a company, you would have a very hard time to manage your personal beliefs. It will not always be compatible with the corporation, especially if you're educated in esoteric teachings. What you can do is to have your own small business and try to survive. I have been doing that already. I'm engaging in organic growing, and I have just started, and I hope to be successful. Even though if it's not successful, I will still be happy because I know I'm doing the right thing. So for most of us, the reason why we're doing this is that when we go to college, we were never taught about establishing our own business. It was only lately that entrepreneurial approach have come into being. It is much fun and better rewarding if you establish your own company and prove the principles that we have learned in Theosophy. I believe it is workable. I believe it is true. Big Houchin have proven it. And I hope you can teach us more. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Brother Danny. And that is why we are having all these discussions and talks and learning. And actually what Brother Vic has shared, it strengthens our trust and faith that it is possible and it can be done. If one person has done it, anyone can do it. So thank you, Brother Danny, for sharing your valuable insights. Catalina?
You're welcome.
Yes, well, we are running a little bit short of time, so we want to thank all of you, and we want to invite Professor Shinde. I guess Professor Shinde has something to share, so please, Professor Shinde, before our closing.
Thank you, Brother Vic. Very nice. You have enlightened us. We should not divide the life into personal life, spiritual life, or social life, or corporate life. That can be a holistic life. If our motive behind conducting that business is really honest, truthful, that is what you pointed out. Very nice. Thank you very much for it was really interesting and inspiring. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Shindeji, for sharing your thoughts and just reading a couple of comments here in the chat. Everyone is thanking Brother Vic for being an example of friendly industrial existence. Thank you so much, Brother Vic, for sharing your corporate experiences and how to deal with it in our daily life. Very inspiring talk. Thank you for your excellent ideas on business and the question we have taken already. And the last, I think that was related to the targets. I think there was one suggestion in that the targets from Desiree Abella, that the performance targets should be finalized with the consultation from below an established work rate. So yeah, that's a very logical thing to do. And thank you. So coming to the end of today's session, first of all, we would like to thank Brother Vic on behalf of Pragasya Studio and all the delegates who very happily accepted our invitation to talk on this subject. And in future, later, we will request him to do also a session on marriage counseling. because because the relationships and these days are under so much of a stress that at some later point, whenever you have some time, and we can plan that. So we will request you that also. And we would like to thank all our delegates who took time off from India and abroad and joined today in this valuable session. Really, we are heartfelt gratitude to you. And now, before the closing prayer, would like to share something, some couple of announcements that this coming Tuesday on 8th March, which is also, I think, International Women's Day, TS Triveni Tuesday Meet has a subject Life and Works of APCNet, which Brother Taral Munshi conducts. That is Indian time 6:30 to 8 p.m. And it will be discussing the life work of Brother APCNet. And then we have Pragyasya Studio. Next Sunday, we will not be having any event. But on 20th March, we invite you all to Samvad, which means a dialogue in English, in conversation with Mr. Pradeep H. Gohil, President of Indian section of the Theosophical Society, in which he will be taking up some questions of his journey, personal, spiritual, and about the working in the Theosophical Society, and about some recent changes in the Constitution. That will be on 20th March, 5 p.m. Indian Standard Time and 11:30 a.m. GMT. So do join us again in those sessions. And now in the end, let us once again come together in heart and mind and pray for the welfare of all the beings in this manifestation, wherever they are, whatever challenges they are facing. Oh, may all become happy. May none fall ill. May all see auspiciousness everywhere. May none ever feel sorrow. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Thank you once again, Brother Vic and everyone, for making
Thank
this
you very much.
a very memorable one, and may it inspire many, many more people in this and make our world a better one. Thank you. Namaste.
Stay. Have a great week ahead.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Catalina.
Catalina. Thank you, Shikhar.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Shikhar ji. Thank you, Katrina ji. Thank you, Vic.
Thank you very much.